Leo sat in the pitch-black silence of his living room, his eyes fixed on the glowing red numbers of his digital clock. It was 2:59 a.m. He counted down the seconds in his head. 3, 2, 1... Right on cue, the floorboards began to hum. Then came the bass, a heavy rhythmic thump, thump, thump that rattled the teeth in his skull. Most people would call this a noise complaint, but as Leo stared at the shared wall, he knew the truth. His neighbors weren't just partying, they were using that sound as a weapon to destroy his life. It all started over something as small as a plastic bin. Leo was a quiet guy, a software engineer, who valued his peace and his sleep. When his neighbors, the Millers, started leaving their overflowing trash cans directly in front of his driveway, he didn't go over there screaming. He walked over, knocked on the door, and politely asked Dave Miller to move them. David had just looked at him with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. "Sure thing, neighbor," he said, his voice dripping with fake sincerity. But the bins didn't move. In fact, more appeared. When the HOA finally stepped in and slapped the Millers with a heavy fine based on Leo's formal complaint, the polite phase of the neighborly relationship ended. The Millers were the self-appointed royalty of the cul-de-sac. They didn't take kindly to being told what to do by a snitch. The retaliation began small. A few pieces of garbage tossed over the fence, a bag of dog waste left on the porch, but then it got personal. One morning, Leo walked out to his car to find a deep jagged scratch running the entire length of the passenger side. It was a clear message: we can touch you whenever we want. But even the car wasn't the breaking point, it was the sleep deprivation. The music would start every single night Leo had a big presentation or an early morning meeting. It was surgical. They weren't even awake to enjoy the music. Leo realized they were putting a high-powered speaker against the wall and sleeping in the back of their house with earplugs in. One afternoon, while Leo was in his backyard trying to clear his head, he heard Dave's voice coming from over the fence. Dave was laughing, clinking a beer bottle against someone else. "Just a few more months," Dave bragged. "If we keep the pressure on, he'll have to break down and list the place by June. Then Sarah and Mike can swoop in, grab it for 50 grand under market value, and we finally get some friends on the block instead of snitches." Leo felt a chill down his spine. It had nothing to do with the weather. This wasn't just a petty feud. This was a coordinated effort to tank his property value and steal his equity. Something shifted in Leo's mind that afternoon. The victim was gone, and the engineer took over. Leo knew the proper channels were useless. He'd called the cops 3 times. Every single time the Millers saw the patrol car on their ring camera, killed the power to the speakers, and sat in the dark pretending to be asleep. The officers would just shrug and tell Leo, "It's a civil matter, man. Not much we can do." But Leo was a specialist in audio processing. He understood sound better than Dave Miller understood his own ego. He went online and ordered a directional parabolic microphone, the kind of high-tech gear used to record birds from a mile away. He set it up in his attic, aimed it directly at the Miller's patio, and hit record. He wasn't looking for music anymore. He was looking for dirt. For 2 weeks, Leo lived in his headphones. He listened to them talk about their grocery list, their kids, and their vacations. But then, on a random Tuesday, he hit pay dirt. He caught Dave bragging to a buddy about his consulting firm, which was really just a shell company he was using to claim thousands in illegal tax exemptions. The next day was even better. He captured Brandon Miller's voice, clear as a bell, loud laughing as she described the satisfying screech of her house key against Leo's car. He looked so pathetic looking at that scratch this morning, she giggled. I think he's finally cracking. Leo sat in the darkened office, the recordings looped in his ears. He felt a surge of cold, calm anger. He could have taken the tapes to the police right then, but he knew how the legal system worked. It would be slow, they would get a fine, a slap on the wrist, and the harassment would just get smarter. He needed to destroy their reputation in the one place they valued it the most, the neighborhood. The perfect opportunity arrived when the Millers announced a massive housewarming and block party. They were inviting everyone, the HOA board, the neighbors, and the friends who were waiting to buy Leo's house. Leo watched from his window as they set up a professional-grade Bluetooth sound system in their backyard. Dave was strutting around like a king, greeting everyone with a fake white smile. He looked like the pillar of the community he pretended to be. The party was in full swing when Dave stood up on a lawn chair to make a toast. We love this block, shouted, holding his beer high. We believe in being good neighbors and looking out for one another. That's what community is about. Leo leaned over his laptop and whispered right on cue. Leo had spent 3 days cracking the security on the Millers' new speakers. Dave, in his infinite arrogance, hadn't even bothered to change the default pairing code. Leo hit play. The upbeat party music cut out instantly. A heavy static filled the yard, followed by Dave's voice, amplified to a deafening volume. Another week of the 3 a.m. buzz and he'll be gone. I already told Sarah to have her down payment ready. We'll get that house for 50 grand on the market value. The backyard went silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the grass. Dave froze in his beer, still held high, his face turning a deep bruised purple. He fumbled for his phone, his thumbs tripping over the screen, but Leo had locked the connection. Then came Brenda's voice. Did you see his face when he saw the scratch on his car? I almost felt bad. Almost, but hey, that's what he gets for calling the HOA. The neighbors began to murmur. The HOA president, who was standing right next to the keg, looked at Dave with pure disgust, but Leo wasn't done. The recording shifted to Dave's detailed explanation of his tax fraud, including the exact dollar amounts he was hiding. The friends who were supposed to buy the house didn't stay to hear the end. They vanished towards the side of the gate in seconds. The rest of the neighborhood followed, leaving Dave and Brenda standing alone in a yard full of half-eaten burgers and expensive audio equipment that was still screaming their crimes in the sky. Leo didn't even step outside. He just sat on his porch with a cold glass of water, watching the blue and red lights of the police cruisers pull into the streets. Then minutes later, Dave and Brenda were led away in handcuffs. Leo had sent the full unedited files to the local precinct and the IRS tip line an hour before the party started. The property damage was a misdemeanor, but the tax evasion and conspiracy to commit fraud, that was the end of the Millers. 3 months later, a for sale sign went up in the yard because the entire neighborhood knew exactly what had happened. No one wanted to buy from them. They had to settle for a first sale price, losing over $50,000 in equity, exactly the amount they had tried to steal from Leo. Leo eventually got a new neighbor, a quiet librarian who spent her weekends painting hydrangeas. On her moving day, Leo walked over with a fresh plate of cookies. If you ever need anything, Leo said with a genuine smile, just let me know. I'm a very attentive neighbor. And so we have come to the end of another video from the Retaliation Diaries. What do you guys think? The Millers weren't just bad neighbors, they were predatory, using noise as a psychological weapon to drive a man from his home. That's just crazy. Comment your craziest revenge stories below. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell icon so you don't miss any of the juicy stories where the retaliation always slaps.